Okay, I'm sure you're faced with the same dilemma. I got a new car over here, and as you can see, there are no holes to mount the license plate. You know, I could drill holes in there, but I really don't want to. I'm not too bothered about it, but then if I sell the car on, the next owner might be bothered by those holes. What I did is I got this Skene design mounting kit, and what it does is it has brackets that mount underneath this lip of the bumper so that the holes are out of sight. So the kit comes with these two brackets. You can see the mounting points, and they both got adhesive tips. Those adhesive tips are just for temporarily holding the plates in place until you put in the self-tapping screws. So you got the two brackets, you got the 4 screws and their corresponding washers that screw the plate into the bracket, and then these 2 self-tapping screws will go underneath the bumper and hold the brackets in place. And then you got a drill to drill padded holes for the self-tapping screws, and then you got an alcohol pads to clean the area that you're going to stick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to preliminarily mount the license plate, and then mark out where the brackets should end up. Now, just a closer look at the brackets, you can see that there's a raised section over there where the screw is going to go in. Okay, we've got the brackets on. I have not tightened them because I want them a little bit loose so I can move them around and position them in the final position. So one thing to note is the way the plates are mounted. This is the top of the plate. So you want them set in this way so that you can tighten the screws from this side. The width from end to end for the brackets, that is from this end of the bracket to this end of the bracket, is 18.8 centimeters. So I'm going to use that measurement, and I'm also going to measure the distance from the end of the bumper to where the brackets are meant to be mounted to make sure they're both equal on both sides. Before you start measuring where you're going to mount the plates, dry fit the plate. Try and see where it looks best, how far the bracket should come out, and then check it out and make sure it's how you want it to look, because I tried it one way without actually doing that, and the result didn't come out too well. So just figure out exactly how far the bracket should stick out and what looks good, and then use that to determine your final mounting points for the brackets. Go underneath, and with masking tape and with your ruler, measure underneath and make sure you mark out exactly where the mounting points are going to go. And when you mount them, you place them against those mounting points that you measured. So use masking tape underneath the bumper to mark out where you're going to put the plates. I'll look for any features that will help you center the plate. For example, underneath this bumper I got this tab over here, and this is right in the center of the bumper, so I know that my plate should be centered around this point. And as you can see over here, I've marked exactly where my bracket should go. So my bracket is actually going to be against this mark and aligned against this line over here. So on either side I know that when I push my brackets in, they should align against those lines. So everything's measured up. So the next thing to do is clean the underneath so that we can put the adhesive pads onto the bumper. So let me go ahead and do that. And what we're going to use is the alcohol pads. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm first going to use, not the beer, I'm going to use some kitchen towels, clean there with water first, and after it's dry, then I'll use the alcohol swabs. Let me go ahead and do it. Okay, it's time to go ahead and mount the plate. I've cleaned the underneath with water, it's dry. I've cleaned with alcohol, that's dry too. You can see the pads I use now. Don't worry about these pieces of cardboard, it's just that if this doesn't go well for you, I don't want you to come and identify me through my license plate and give me a few slaps. Alright. Take out the protective covers from the sticky pads. Okay, that's it. So I got the sticky pads in place. Unfortunately, my recording didn't come out well, but what I did is I placed the brackets exactly against the marks that I measured. It's actually 4 millimeters into this masking tape. I cut a section out. So the brackets are perfectly inset and they're perfectly centered. So now the mounts are in place. All I have to do is drill and then screw everything into place. If you're mounting the brackets on a Z4, I'll tell you that there's a 2 centimeter gap I've measured from the back of the edge of the bumper to where the bracket is. So that has worked well for me. You might want to try that as well. Okay, now that is done, the next thing to do is to drill the holes and put the self-tapping screws in there. Now, we've been given this drill bit. It probably is the right one, but I think I'm going to go to my tool collection and get one that is slightly smaller so that when I put in this self-tapping screws, they screw in real tight. So that's going to be an experiment. I'm going to look for the next size down and try it out. Okay, I looked around, I didn't have a smaller bit, so the one supplied to the kit is going to have to do. Now for those of you who have a Z4, I'd note that the drill can actually fit underneath the space, and he pretty much got a good angle to get it in at a right angle. So let's give it a try. The first one made. Second hole made. Now, one thing I should have mentioned earlier is when you stick these sticky pads onto the bumper, you really ought to be careful with your placement, because once they stick on, they're not coming off easily, and you're going to make a mess. So holes are drilled. Next thing to do is get a screwdriver and screw in the self-tapping screws. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, I've got a screw in here. Let me tighten it. They say to tighten it really tight, but I don't want to tighten it until it breaks the thread and becomes useless. There are 2 bolts over here that need to be tightened, and they control the side-to-side movement of these brackets. Now the problem is you can't tighten them because they're blocked by the number plate. So I have to figure out a way to tighten them first before I mount the plate, and then I can put the plate into position. Okay, here's a solution I've come up with. I got a piece of cardboard. What I'm going to do is it's got to be cut about this. Well, the important thing is it's got to hold the bracket securely. I mark the holes where the screws are going to go in. Roughly the size of the number plate. If you've got an old number plate that is disposable, you don't need it and you can cut it, that's even better. But this will work for me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mount it, and I'm going to cut holes that will allow me to tighten these bolts while the brackets are properly aligned. So let me just go ahead and mark where the points I should cut out. Okay, I have a good idea of what I should cut out. Let me go ahead. Where are these tin snips? Okay. That should be good enough for one. That for the other. Okay, so you can see where I'm going to mount the license plate, the brackets, and then I'm going to be able to tighten the nuts using these slots that I've cut out. Alright. So next thing is just to punch a hole through these. Oops, that is not so good, but it's okay. Try not to punch a hole through your finger. Okay, next thing to do, mount the plates back. Okay, one thing I'm discovering is that these screws are actually making marks on the bumper itself. Small hairline, featherline marks, but if you want to protect your bumper, you know, you might consider putting a protective pad between the brackets and the bumper, or simply mounting these brackets away from the bumper so they don't touch at all. I'm going to put something a little later to protect the bumper. Okay, so you can see I've mounted these plates on. They're tightened just enough to hold the brackets in place. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten these over here, and I'm going to tighten them real hard because I don't want them to move again. And what I see from this install is that it might be wise to use some seizing compounds to seize the screws in place. Okay, that's as tight as I'm prepared to put them. So these are not going to move. So now, since these are properly tightened, I'm not going to be able to access them again, so that's why I really want to get them tightened now. I can now remove this cardboard and then mount the license plate onto this. Okay, I've been a little busy since the last clip, so what's been happening? Well, this design looks pretty good, but then I got a little nervous and decided if the self-tapping screw fails, I don't want the plate to just get lost. So what I did is I put 2 tie wraps and attached them to the bumper. So if these brackets come loose, at least the plate will be hanging somewhere. I might hear some commotion, but at least won't lose the plate. The second thing is I've added some pads from weather stripping. This is weather stripping for the door. I just cut them where necessary so that they're thinner and put them on this so that they don't rub against the bumper. So now everything is all set up. The last step is just to install the number plates and then tighten these screws over here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this thread locker. I'm going to use, I've shaken it, mixed it well according to the instructions, and I'm going to dab it in the screws to make sure that everything is solidly locked in once everything is set up. I've put the Loctite thread lock over there. You can see it over there. So once I tighten these, they should be very secure. Okay, the last thing to do is tighten these screws over here. You can see I put the washer on them. So I've actually gone ahead and tightened them all. And then once that is tightened, you go behind, and then there are the screws that prevent the bracket from moving forward, that hold the upright. So just go ahead and tighten those. This can just about reach them. And that is pretty much it. You're all set to go. One thing I'd note is that initially I thought that just a self-tapping screw to hold the brackets in place would be insufficient. But feeding the brackets now in place, it feels pretty secure. So I think this is a pretty good permanent solution. So this is my first install and first use of the Skene design license plate holders. So any things that I do different? Well, there are a number of mistakes I made. The first mistake I made was not allowing for something protective behind the plates. So when you're placing the plates on the bumper and marking out the position, I'd suggest that you already have protective pads behind them if you need them, or at least take into account a small gap that you can leave between the brackets and the bumper so that it doesn't scratch, the plates don't scratch the bumper. There is the final result. It looks a lot better than the first mounting that I did. So you remember the old adage, measure twice, fit once, and it'll serve you very well. So make sure you measure everything very accurately, and do a lot of dry fit testing to make sure that you're going to like where it's going to end up before you actually finalize your mounting points. So hopefully this has been useful to you, and you can make up your mind whether this will work for you. I think it's a pretty good solution. There is a manual that comes with the kit, and it's got instructions, so review these and see if there are any other tips you can pick from it. And if there are any suggestions that you have that could improve this install, please put them in the comments. And if this video has been useful to you, please give me a like, and thanks very much for watching.